Hey guys, what's up? It's Mokozunky and welcome to a new top 10 video at long last. So what are we going to be doing this top 10 video? Well, according to It's Plan BNL, he's really tired of all this skiller and minigame content, so it's time to do top 10 bosses. Now there's a lot of different ways to rank the top 10 bosses, but based on some of your guys' suggestions, I decided to do top 10 most difficult solo boss fights because solo bossing has become extremely popular lately. A lot of solo nexing, a lot of people are learning how to solo all kinds of bosses. Obviously, Arak is probably the best money in the game boss-wise, and it is for the most part a solo boss. So we're going to be doing that. So I'll be ranking from 10 to 1 bosses that I believe to be the most difficult fights, and I'll talk a little bit about the rewards. But of course, the money you can make is based largely on how many kills per hour you can get, and also on your luck. So it's a little bit difficult to rank bosses based on how profitable they are. So I thought it would be fun to rank bosses based on their difficulty instead. Number 10 on the list is going to be the Legion bosses, and I did wrestle between DKs and Legions for number 10 here, and for the most part, the thing about Legions that makes them difficult to put on a list of hard bosses is you can avoid the vast majority of the damage from Legions just by running around in a square and avoiding almost all of their very damaging attacks, which are their lightning attacks. But the more I think about it, Legions do have some difficulty in the form of Legio Tertius and Legio Quintus. They can be a little bit tricky to learn. They also, once you know how to do the bosses, can get to the point where you basically take little to no damage, but at the same point they definitely have more of a learning curve than the Dagonoth Kings do, and there is a little bit of trickiness involved when you first get into the Legions, just avoiding damage, because even though their attacks are very easy to avoid, if you do get hit by them, they can kill you very quickly. Number 9 on the list is QBD, or Queen Black Dragon, and the fun part about Queen Black Dragon is when you are a low level, this boss is very difficult, but a lot of people want to kill her because she has the Royal Crossbow, and if you want to forge that Royal Crossbow, if you want level 80 ranged weapons without having to do dungeoneering for the chaotic crossbows, or having to buy a really expensive Zerite bow, then this is what you gotta do. And before you have super antifires and Dragonbane bolts and high level weapons, this boss is actually a really big challenge. Of course, when you do get to a higher level, it becomes more of a joke, and you can often do Slayer tasks where you stay for multiple hours at QBD without banking, but definitely for the lower levels, this is quite a difficult boss, but still a very rewarding one, and a lot of people kill this boss even to this day because it's a solid 4 to 5 mil per hour off of task, sometimes even more of that when you're on Slayer task with Black Dragons, and killing this boss for long extended periods of time. Number 8 on the list is General Grardor in hard mode in the God Wars dungeon. So this boss is going to look extremely easy from the footage that you're currently seeing. However, Grardor does have a few tricky effects that he can use in combat if you let him hit you. So you do want to just continuously run throughout the room if you want to camp this boss for a long time solo, because it's pretty much impossible to stay here for very long without using this extreme cheese tactic. And yes, the kills are pretty slow doing it this way, but sometimes when he hits you, he can occasionally use his special abilities, such as this one where he reflects half of the damage that he's taken, and he can also throw rocks around the room sometimes, and those can cause really high damage. So not a very difficult boss in terms of you can mostly cheese the fight, but it is a fairly slow boss fight, and if he does get the time to get some of his special abilities off, they can hurt pretty bad as well. Overall, Grardor hard mode, not a great boss for profit or anything, but it is there for the increased pet drop chance. Next on the list is hard mode Zamorak God Wars, and this is very similar to the Bandos God Wars in the solo strategy, again just running around the room. And the only reason why this is technically a harder boss fight than the Bandos is because, for one, Zami has longer range with his swords. He can actually hit you from a couple of squares away instead of having to be right next to you like Bandos does, and also he can kill you very, very quickly if you lag or look away from the screen for a bit because you're getting so bored or just are distracted in some way, and he can throw spikes in the ground that cause very high damage and can kill you from full HP quite quickly. So that's the main danger with this boss. It's very easy to avoid the spikes, but if you were to get hit by them, they can drop you fast, and Bandos doesn't have an attack that can kill you in as little time as the hard mode Zamorak can, so that's why Zamorak is technically a little bit harder. Again, there's not much reason to kill this boss other than the pet chance. The drops aren't great and the kills are slow, but it is there for anyone that wants to check it out. Next on the list is Corporal Beast, and this boss can actually be quite a challenge without some items that make it significantly easier. So if you were someone that did not have access to these items, which are the Scrimshaw of Vampirism, the Blood Necklace, and the Vampirism Aura, this might actually be a pretty challenging fight. With those 3, you're able to heal enough that you can do 5, 6, 7, maybe even up to 10 kills without having to bank on a maxed account, so the boss is not terribly difficult to solo. But as a lower level, the boss, again like QBD, is quite challenging. At higher levels it does become a bit of a joke and very, very easy. So this is an annoying boss, similar to some other bosses that will be on the list later, because you have to dodge the core all the time, and you can kill the core with abilities that hit multiple targets, but at the same time it's a bit of an annoying boss to solo just because of that. But still, a lot of people choose to do it. It's not bad money solo. You can get a lot of Onyx Bolt drops and stuff like that, and of course the boss does have a pet related to it, and because of that, people will always be killing it. And this boss definitely got a lot better when they released instances for it fairly recently. Overall, it's a fun boss to solo, and I personally enjoy it quite a bit. Now we start to get into some of the bosses that actually present a bit of a challenge. Of course, it's a little bit difficult to find 10 bosses that are hard for maxed accounts in the game. There aren't really 10 bosses. And of course, for lower level accounts, a lot of these bosses will be much more challenging. I've fought quite a few of them on my Iron Man, and believe me, God Wars Dungeon is a lot less easy when you don't have access to stuff like Turmoil and Overloads that just make every boss significantly easier. But Zilyana is harder than all of the other melee God Wars Dungeon bosses, and that's because you can kill her with the running around the room thing, but it's so slow and so painful that it's really not worth doing. But if you want to actually fight her face up and get up in her grill and just take on her special abilities that she has in the hard mode phase like a man, she can kill you very, very quickly. And there are some tactics that you have to use, such as using a sunshine in the right spot and keeping her in the sunshine to successfully complete the kill without it taking minutes upon minutes. So it is definitely trickier than the other melee God Wars Dungeon bosses to kill. It has more difficult mechanics to get around, but overall it is a really fun fight as well. And now we have all of the God Wars Dungeon hard mode bosses making the list. So Creera is by far the most annoying out of all the God Wars Dungeon bosses to solo, and the reason for that is because you have to pay very close attention with this boss, unlike the other God Wars Dungeon bosses where you can go into your manual mode and just run around the room and very, very easily kill them without much thought put into it. But with Creera, you have to make sure that the storms do not go underneath you, because if they do, you can be dropped from full health in just a couple of seconds, or lose your sign of life, and you really don't want that to happen. Also, this boss can be annoying in the fact that every 20 seconds or so, it will draw all the storms into him and then shoot them out again, and this will give him a period of invincibility while he does that, and this makes it annoying for abilities like Death Swiftness, where you have your Death Swiftness ready to go and your thresholds ready to use, and you can't use them because he's invincible. So overall, just a really annoying fight and kind of tricky because you have to make sure the storms aren't going to kill you, and overall, it's not that fun of a boss compared to the other God Wars Dungeon hard modes. And finally, we get into the upper echelon of bosses, with the third hardest solo boss in the game being Araxi. And I do want to clarify that this is Araxi at 0 in rage. So when I say Araxi is the third hardest boss in the game, that doesn't mean all the time, because when Araxi is at 300% in rage, you could make a case that that is the most difficult solo fight in the game. However, the majority of people who are first starting out Araxi and just looking to get their first kill, they're going to be killing the boss on 0 in rage, and it's going to be much, much easier than a boss with max in rage. So you could make the case for 300% in rage Araxi being a harder fight, and that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that. But all in all, Araxi is a pretty fun fight. There's a lot of mechanics involved. There's different paths that you can go down, which have different mechanics all to their own. And overall, I've been learning to enjoy this boss quite a bit. When I first started the boss, of course, there was a learning curve involved, and it took time to be able to get kills and all that. But now with time, it's a lot easier, and I'm lucky that this clip is sped up so you didn't have to see me, a Revolution prod, desperately failing at trying to use manual against a boss while also prayer switching. Not a very easy thing to do when you're not used to it. But anyway, Araxi dies, and this is one of the best solo bosses in the game. Definitely the best solo boss for money making if you're interested in that, because the drops are just great, and as you get more experience with this boss, you can make bank killing him as long as you have at least decent luck with weapon and leg pieces. And number 2 on the list is Nex. So Nex is a boss that has gotten very popular to solo lately. A lot of people have been learning how to solo the boss and also learning that it's not terribly difficult, especially with all these cool things like auras and scrimshaws that just make the fight so much easier. And I'm also using Mage for Nex. I find Mage to be the easiest. I would say that most people probably use Melee, but for all you out there that are looking to get your first Nex solo and you haven't gotten it yet with Melee, I would say try Mage because I find it to be much easier personally. Anyway, Nex is definitely a boss that takes some time to learn how to kill, and for everyone, their first few attempts at a Nex solo probably either aren't going to succeed or are not going to go very smoothly at all. I personally do not have much experience with Nex soloing, and I can get kills, but I definitely can't get them in a great amount of time or get them using a small amount of food. There's quite a bit of struggling going on every single time I do an attempt, but getting the kill is the most important thing, of course, and also you could make a case for 300% Enrage Raxi being more difficult than Nex. That definitely varies person to person depending on how good you are with Raxi versus how good you are at Nex. I personally think that 300% Raxi is probably harder than this boss, but Araxi is a very unique boss where it varies in difficulty depending on how many you have killed that day, and there's just nothing else you can really compare that to. Anyway, Nex soloing is definitely something that's worth getting into because getting a solo pet is pretty much the PVM dream. I'm still working on getting a first Nex solo drop of any kind. Hopefully it will happen someday, but up to this point it has not happened yet, but I'm still making cracks at it every once in a while. And finally, we get to the number 1 hardest boss to solo in the game, and I think this is going to be, without a doubt, absolutely Kalphite King. I highly doubt anyone would disagree with that, because this boss is very tricky to learn how to solo. Definitely has by far the longest learning curve of any boss to learn how to kill it. It just takes quite a bit of failed attempts, at least this is what I've heard anyway, to get your first successful kill at the boss, and it can be quite annoying with, of course, all the stuns and all the avoiding of the stuns that you personally have to do in order to kill the Kalphite King solo. Now, I personally am not skilled enough, at least not yet, to kill the Kalphite King solo, but I had a friend who was kind enough to lend me some footage in order to show you guys what a solo Kalphite King kill might look like. Of course, if you're looking to attempt a solo Kalphite King kill of your own, you want to make sure that you have tier 90 weapons and armor in all 3 styles, as well as you really want to be on a task to kill Kalphite King. That's the great thing with Kalphite King, though, is you can get a Slayer task and then you get 14.5% accuracy and damage through your Slayer helm while killing the boss, and a lot of bosses don't have that. You can't get a Spider's task and then kill Araxi with the Slayer helm, as cool as that would be if people had to go to like the lowest level Slayer Master to try to get a Spider's task for Araxi. That would be pretty awesome, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. Also, as of yet, Nihil's task does not give you damage bonus when killing Nex. Maybe someday, we'll see. So Kalphite King will definitely remain at the pinnacle of solo bossing for at least the near future, and it's quite a difficult fight to learn how to do, but once you get it down, it's also extremely impressive. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. Thank all of you for watching, and as a fun way to end off the video, let me know what was the hardest boss for you personally to learn how to kill. For me, it was probably learning how to do Kalphite King for the first time when it first came out. Let's just say I died a lot to that magic phase, and no, that wasn't solo, but maybe someday we'll get a Kalphite King solo done, and that would be an awesome thing to upload. Anyway, also let me know what you would like to see next for the top 10 series, and maybe one will come out sooner than the last episode, hopefully within a couple weeks or something like that. That's all for this time, so I'll see you guys next time. Farewell.